It was a crime that broke the city's heart. Now the suspects in the Junior Guzman Feliz murder case are facing justice and the evidence. Pix 11's Mary Murphy takes you inside the Junior trial.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on Pix 11 Facebook Live. Just over 30 minutes ago, I got back from the Bronx. I was at the trial all day, day 9 of the Junior trial, and we had a really big outburst. It was supposed to be cross-examination of Kevin Alvarez, the star witness. Leandra Feliz got really upset during the cross-examination by Kyle Waters, not necessarily because of Waters was saying, but because of something she was seeing in the court on the screen. A new video she said that she had never seen before. It was a different camera angle from inside the bodega, and it showed Junior hiding under a sink behind the counter. There was a locked door that blocked the gang members from getting at Junior, and he was under a sink seeking his safe haven. And during the cross-examination, it came out that the door, yes, was opened. Kevin Alvarez said he got access to Junior. You saw on the footage that one of the bodega workers looked like he was grabbing Alvarez's arm, but then Alvarez said he started kicking Junior. The mother got really upset seeing that footage from Junior under the sink. We have she started screaming. We have footage of the FDNY responders. An ambulance came to the courthouse. They went inside. I spoke to Leandra Feliz this evening. She had texted me before the 5 o'clock news and said she had what she called a nervous breakdown. She was so upset by seeing that footage of her son hiding under the sink. She said her blood pressure went up. She had to go home. She didn't come back to court. The judge had to stop testimony before lunchtime. The FDNY crew told us they could not speak about her condition, but she contacted me and said she was feeling a little bit better, emotionally drained. Her blood pressure was up. But it was just such an insane day in court, seeing Miss Feliz screaming, being dragged out. Well, not dragged out. She actually was carried out by a group of court officers, and the jury was told to go back to its room. We had to stop the proceedings until the afternoon. Miss Leandra Feliz did not come back. So we do have a very special guest tonight who was with us a month ago, Detective Michael O'Keefe, retired from the NYPD, first grade retired detective. You've done a lot of gang-related homicides, and I appreciate you being here because we have a lot to talk about concerning this witness. But first, I want to go to the piece that I did today at 5 o'clock, which talked a little bit about what happened and also a little bit about the cross-examination of Alvarez. Cross-examination of the Junior trial star witness finally resumed after a startling outburst by the slain teen's mother abruptly halted testimony before lunchtime.
I'm suffering every day.
Leandra Feliz, who's been praised for her strong public demeanor over the last 11 months, finally lost it, screaming and shaking in her seat as the defense hammered witness Kevin Alvarez, getting him to acknowledge he knew the suspects on the bodega sidewalk would have weapons before he dragged the 15-year-old out, showing the image of a solitary Junior clutching his neck on the sidewalk after sustaining a lethal wound. No, no, the mother yelled before court officers carried her out and told photographers not to shoot the hallway scene. Earlier, Alvarez acknowledged he had led the convoy of 4 cars that hunted Junior, even depositing a pack of men on the corner of 3rd Avenue near St. Barnabas Hospital. Waters, when you cut Junior off to prevent him from going to the safety of the hospital, you were completely alone. Waters, you, if you chose to, could have driven off and left, yet you continued pursuing Junior. Waters, Junior is behind a locked glass partition. Alvarez, yes, sir. Waters, he was in relative safety on that side of the partition. Alvarez, yes, sir. Waters, but for you pushing through that door, Junior would have stayed on the other side of the door. Well, as I said in my piece, he was really hammering at Alvarez, the defense attorney, Kyle Waters, who did the first cross-examination today. Not unexpected, right?
No, obviously it's his job. His responsibility as a defense attorney is to provide a vigorous defense on behalf of his client. how you feel about that client doesn't really come into it. It's a sworn duty.
You're not surprised there was a deal in this case. That was one of the big stories of the week, what kind of a deal Kevin Alvarez got. We have a photo of him. He's now 20 years old. He was arrested for murder in the second degree last June. He was the first one, literally one of the first ones in the door at the 48th precinct a couple of days after Junior was killed. He supposedly in the beginning was not cooperating. He went to jail, and then a few months later, his lawyer started doing outreach. And he acknowledged in court today under cross-examination, yes, if I truthfully testify in this and other trials, my manslaughter 1 plea could be withdrawn and I'll get out with time served. A lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people upset about it.
Yeah, well, people generally, the goal obviously is to have justice in a case, and that basically means that all of the malefactors have to pay for their crimes, their sins, as it were. Unfortunately, in a situation like this, you might not get anybody if you don't cut a deal with one of them. Now, what went into that decision to give this guy a deal is obviously known to the prosecutors and the detectives.
I think I know a little bit based on what's been said in court. You know, we all knew there was another cooperator. There was one guy that was seen on the video bolting into the bodega right after Alvarez. That guy was never publicly arrested, really never publicly named. Now he's been named in court during the trial. Michael Reyes.
He's on the witness list.
He's on the witness list, but he's been named also during Alvarez's testimony. He was a member of the Bad Boys.
Okay.
Bad Boys sect of the Trinitarios. So we know that he made a deal. We don't know yet what his deal is, but there's so much upset over Alvarez that the manslaughter 1 could potentially be thrown out if he testifies.
Well, it wouldn't be thrown out, it would be worked off.
Worked off?
Yeah, it was, as he testified in court. He has a responsibility to truthfully testify in this and any other prosecutions that might be taking place.
Mm-hmm. What I know about what's going on, and I don't know everything, believe me, but what I have figured out from following the trial in court every day, that Kevin Alvarez was maybe more in the middle of certain things than Sosa Reyes was. Sosa Reyes got into a getaway car. I believe he was witness A that was talked about at the pretrial hearings. And he heard 2 of the alleged killers talking about what had just happened. And supposedly one of them threatened Sosa Reyes in the car. But what Kevin Alvarez brings is he knew the 5 murder defendants better than the other guy that we heard about who was cooperating from the beginning. Because Michael Sosa Reyes belonged to one set. Kevin Alvarez says he was part of the main set involved in Junior's murder.
Which means he probably has some insight and some testimony to substantiate the conspiracy to involve everybody.
And I think what is coming out is that he can identify the players better than Sosa Reyes.
Well, he knows them, sure.
Right. He was only a probationary member for 4 months, he said, of the Los Chures set. He did admit today under cross-examination that at one point when he was a younger teen that he was a member of the Bloods. He was actually in the Bloods, he said, for 3 years. Then he got a GED from high school and he went into the Army, but then he said he got a back injury. And the defense attorney, Kyle Waters, kind of mocked him about that. He said, oh, you're back. How was it feeling the night you were dragging Junior out? That must have been pretty strenuous, wasn't it?
That's pretty good work for the jury.
Yeah, I mean, so he brought that up. Also, we have some footage of the cars, and we've shown it before in past shows about the trial. Alvarez acknowledged on the stand he was driving the first car in the convoy. There were 4. He was in the first one, his mother's car, a gray Acura. And it was brought out, once again, that he cut Junior off. Junior was running for several blocks, being chased by the cars. At one point, Alvarez let a bunch of guys out on 3rd Avenue and 183rd, right by the hospital, St. Barnabas, where Junior's mother works. And the defense attorney said, you had a chance to just go and not pursue Junior. They got out. But you drove right to the bodega. You went in. And so they were like really kind of hammering him pretty hard, as I said.
Well, which is their job.
Right. Also, they were trying to get him in any inconsistency that they could, which is what defense attorneys do. And what we've been hearing about a lot this week with Kevin Alvarez on the stand is about the number 2 alleged leader of the Los Chures set. His name is Frederick Fenn. he wasn't arrested till like almost 2 months, I think, after Junior was killed. So Alvarez was saying during direct examination that then gave him the order outside the bodega, go and take the kid out. But the defense attorney was using the video, freeze frame by freeze frame, certain points in the video, saying, okay, where's Colita? That's the nickname for Frederick Fenn, allegedly. Where's Colita? I don't see him on the street. And Kevin Alvarez is saying, well, he wasn't there. So it was like odd. Alvarez said, I believe, that Colita was in the car with him during the drive. So, but it kind of seemed a little inconsistent that he couldn't place him on the street, because he told the jury during direct examination that Colita told him to go in and take the kid.
Right. Well, it makes sense that the defense counsel would try and catch him in some inconsistencies, for the simple reason that he's the witness that's going to provide the testimony with respect to who did what and who was there.
Right.
You have a video record. If the video record doesn't match up his testimony and he contradicts himself, well, now you got a shot of shooting the whole testimony down, calling it into question in front of the jury. So it stands to reason that the defense attorneys would work so hard to call his testimony into question.
Do you think that him being a witness could backfire? I mean, he admits that he's the one who ran through that door, that protective door that kind of shielded Junior. He pushed that open, and when they tried to stop his fist from beating Junior, then he started kicking him. So do you think that could backfire, this testimony, because he's admitting really heinous things?
If he's their only witness, yeah, it could backfire. You run the risk of alienating, really infuriating a jury, if he's all you have. However, there may be less compromised witnesses who can testify, and the information that he's providing is information. If it isn't refuted on the stand and cross-examination, well, then it can work to help your prosecution. If there are other witnesses that aren't as tainted, shall we say, then you give something for the jury to hold on to. They don't have to hate the prosecution's case because of its witnesses.
The other witness, Sosa Reyes, who is yet to testify, what we've seen of the video, he never touched Junior. From what we've seen, he went in there and he started arguing with the bodega workers. Hey, we want him, we want him. And they were saying nasty stuff, that Junior had hurt someone's grandmother or shot one of their friends. But he leaves. He leaves the premises before Junior's dragged out. And there's no evidence that he touched him with a weapon, yet he did get in a getaway car.
Yeah, he would be
he participated in the chase. But would you say someone like him is less compromised than Kevin Alvarez? Who
Definitely, because you see Alvarez on the tape actually participating in a violent assault.
Whereas the other one, who's there in the dark shirt and
Never
dark
actually
hat,
hit him.
he didn't hit him. So he's less compromised, you would say.
Well, certainly, when you're talking about juries, they're going to be charged strenuously by the judge to put aside their personal feelings. But human nature says that it's not even feasible. Mm-hmm. They're going to hold on to some of their personal feelings about how they feel about the witnesses. When you have someone testifying, if he's your only witness and he is clearly culpable of terrible things that you're seeing on video, you run the risk of you could poison the jury. However, if you have someone who isn't as involved, like this other witness, he was part of something that was really stupid, but he didn't actively participate in the death, basically in the death, in the assault that resulted in the death.
So it might make sense that they're using someone who was compromised, that participated in the assault, but has great information, perhaps.
Well, you want to introduce the information, and he might be the only source of that information. There's a possibility that the defense counsel can impugn him on his character in front of the jury, but he might not be able to impugn his testimony.
Well, he's nervous, but he's actually staying calm, and he's always saying yes, sir, no, sir, to the defense attorneys. And there are 2 female defense attorneys, I should add.
Well, just from personal experience, hundreds and hundreds of hours of courtroom testimony, you're nervous every time.
Yeah.
Even as a professional.
Yes,
You
even as a
learn-
detective.
You learn not to appear nervous.
Right.
Clearly you're confident because you know your case, but it's, particularly in a case like this, as crowded as that courtroom is, it's, you're under the bright lights.
And we were talking about this, about the deal, that it's not unusual in multiple defendant cases, especially in sort of gang cases, for deals to be made that if there are 15 guys, maybe one or two are going to cooperate with the government and get a better deal. And a lot of the people that write to us on social media, they're not understanding this. They're thinking that Alvarez is getting too good a deal.
Well, they also might be, and I don't know this, but my experience tells me that this might not be the only prosecution that he's going to be a witness to.
Well,
This tends to suggest to me that there is a larger RICO conspiracy case against this particular gang, and he's going to be participating as a witness in that.
Right, so it's more than just a second trial for the state. There may be a federal trial.
Well, it could also be a state RICO.
A state RICO.
We have pretty good RICO statutes in New York State also.
So this is what we're hearing over and over. Anna Diaz is writing to us. We have a lot of people commenting, saying he shouldn't be sentenced to time served. He should just get life in prison. He knew Junior wasn't a gang member. He still led him to his death. I think what people are also writing and what we know is that, yeah, he's got a deal, but he'll have to look over his shoulder the rest of his life. I mean,
unquestionably.
I mean, it's a very precarious position to be in.
I wouldn't want to be in it.
You wouldn't want to be in this position.
No.
No, but the government is benefiting because it's getting a lot of insight, allegedly, into this gang.
The fact of the matter is that the government may need the information that he has, and they're forced to cut a deal. The fact of the matter is, crimes like these, gang-related activity, they don't take place on the Upper East Side. They don't take place on certain terrace. They take place in high-crime neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And while you would love to have the church elder out on the street as your eyewitness, or the grade school principal, or even the MTA worker that comes and goes to work, they're not out there for these things to occur because they're smart enough to stay behind locked doors. Because when the sun goes down in neighborhoods like these, stuff like this happens. So you're limited in the witnesses that are available to you.
Right. I think maybe people don't realize that even though we have this great video surveillance, well, that's what everyone says, if these guys were not from that neighborhood, if they were not from the immediate area of Bathgate Avenue and East 183rd Street, the deli people might not have known them.
Sure.
So you would need someone from the inside to give up the names, I'm assuming.
Also, in a case like this, there's a conspiracy that has to be proven here. There's an order that was given. Mm-hmm. Somebody on the inside has to be available to testify to that. This witness may be the only one who can do that.
And they also, the police found out about a safe house or a hideout in New Jersey, in Patterson, and got the first 6 guys within a day of some of these guys going into the precinct. So perhaps they flagged them on the New Jersey hideout. We don't know. But that's something that'll probably later come out. So just now going back to what happened with the mother today with Leandra Felice, we have a photo of her with her son from a couple of years ago. When something like that happens, everyone talked about her strength. She has really carried herself with grace for 11 months now, fighting for her son to get justice. Today, she pretty much flipped out. She couldn't take it anymore.
Well,
seeing him under the sink.
Today, she got to see his last moments on earth, and they were in fear, and they were in pain. And as a parent, can you imagine anything as heart-wrenching as that? I fully understand her behavior in court, and I believe her. It was a nervous breakdown.
You think she
it
had
was a breakdown. As a parent, I would have a breakdown.
So you think she had a nervous breakdown?
She watched her son be murdered on video. Yeah, I think she had a nervous breakdown.
Yeah, and as she told me on the phone when I spoke to her this evening, she said that the EMTs took her blood pressure. It was very high. She was told to go home and get bed rest. She sounded drained when I spoke to her.
I can't imagine her not being exhausted.
It's mentally and physically exhausting going through this.
She's a victim of post-traumatic stress, just witnessing that.
Do you think the judge will have to give her a warning the next time she goes to court? How do you think this will be handled?
She'll be very gently admonished, and I'm sure that prosecution is going to keep keep an eye on her with respect to, is she holding it together? Because you don't really want outbursts like this. Obviously, it could poison the jury. You get a mistrial. But if she's not able to be in the courtroom, someone's going to recognize it, and I'm sure that she'll be let out for certain elements of testimony and evidence that could cause her to have an episode like this.
Well, that happened in the past where, for certain parts of the surveillance, I think the prosecutor would look back to her and she would put her head down on her knees and she wouldn't watch any of it. Actually, last week they played 20 minutes of the surveillance, a compilation of all the different aspects of the chase and the worst parts of when Junior was killed, and she didn't watch any of it. Another time she had walked out and stayed in the vestibule. In this case, I think they accidentally went past a certain point in the surveillance and they showed Junior holding his neck after he received the lethal wound,
Right.
And it became too much. But it wasn't the sidewalk that upset her as much as seeing this new video of Junior under a sink, trying to just stay safe. That got her.
Yeah, as it would any reasonable parent.
So the trial is not going to resume until Tuesday. There's a long holiday weekend. And I know you did a lot of gang homicides in your career. You're an author now. I just want to mention, because you give us such good perspective, and we appreciate you coming in, making the trip to explain everything to the viewers about how the law works, how deals are made, why they have to be made. This was one of your pieces. It's called Shot to Pieces, one of your books.
That's my first novel.
Your first novel, and it's about a gang homicide?
It's based upon a gang homicide involving the Latin Kings.
I'm going to have you hold it up because you have a close-up shot here. If you can hold it up higher. That's one of them.
Yeah.
Shot to Pieces. And what's the other two you want to talk about, just so people know that you're an author and have done
My
other
most
work?
recent release is a collection of short stories called 13 Stories. Fractured, Twisted, and Put Away Wet. It's got a spooky tree on the front. That's my illustration.
Anything about gangs there, or?
There are some crime stories in the 13. Interestingly enough, they're told from the perspective of the criminal, which is a little different than Shot to Pieces.
And then you have a final one.
This is a short novella called Not Buried Deep Enough.
You need to show the title.
Not Buried Deep Enough. It's a little glary.
Okay.
It's a coming-of-age story in Bushwick in the early 1980s. And all three books are available on Amazon.
Okay. Well, I have to thank you for coming in today. And, I covered a lot of organized crime in the late 80s, early 90s, and then a lot of terrorism. But this is my first gang trial, and I know you've dealt with a lot of them in your career, so you kind of know how it goes, I guess.
Yeah, well, the part of the problem is when you're dealing with a gang, you're dealing with insular behavior. Somebody has to witness it. The only people that are witnessing it are other gang members. So
Yeah.
somebody's got to get a deal.
And in fact, there are so many murders that don't get solved because no one's talking, right?
Less now because just the sheer number of murders are down. But yeah, you could have a case where nobody's talking, and sometimes it takes years to crack a witness loose. And basically, it's when they get themselves into their own trouble that they trade the information they have on the previous homicide. Okay. But eventually, in the gang homicides, they all get solved.
All right, so as we wrap up, I'll just say that Kevin Alvarez continued on cross-examination this afternoon, and the trial is not resuming until next Tuesday after Memorial Day. And I thank all of you for joining us today for the recap. We're promising to do a show on Mondays or whenever the trial resumes each week, so it'll be Tuesday next week after the holiday. And at the end of the week, when possible, we will recap what has happened during that week of the trial. The judge had asked the jury if it would be willing to come in on Wednesdays. Normally Wednesday was a day off. He did other court matters. He, because of the pace of the trial going slowly, wanted to have the jury possibly come in every Wednesday, and then it would be 4 or 5 days a week. So far, we've only averaged 3 days a week, but the jury voted it does not want to come in on Wednesdays. So it will continue to be a 3 or 4 day a week trial. So once again, thank you for joining us. Have a safe and happy holiday weekend, and I'll see you next week. Good night.